Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Emmy Nixon. Today we're going to be going through our Week 3 Raw Rundown, where we go through three teams that stood out to us in a positive way, three teams that stood out to us in a negative way. But before we do that, we're going to be doing our Prospect of the Week as well. So subscribe to the channel, make sure you like the video, share with your friends, and joining me from Houston, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Ween. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Monday Night Football about to kick off between the Eagles and the Buccaneers. Then we have another game kicking off here in about an hour between the Bengals and the Rams. Another Monday Night Football doubleheader. Emmy and I are going live for our third week of the Raw Rundown and our Prospect of the Week, recapping the Thursday and Sunday games from Week 3. And maybe, who knows, reacting to whatever happens here in the beginning of this Eagles-Buccaneers game as we both have it on muted in the background. It was a great weekend. Steelers got the dub last night over the Raiders in what was actually a pretty good game in Vegas on Sunday Night Football. Longhorns dispatched a Baylor pretty easily on Saturday, so that was pretty stress-free. It's been a good couple of days. We got a lot to look forward to this upcoming week with the baseball regular season wrapping up, going into the playoffs. We got the Ryder Cup starting on, I believe, Thursday or Friday. We've got another great week of NFL. There's a game I'll be at, which I'll talk about a little later, and another good week of college football as well. So make sure you like and subscribe to our content. Go check out our Ryder Cup draft that we did a couple days ago. Go check out Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. A live episode will be live later on, probably around halftime of these games, around 8 or 8:30, right after this show. It's going to be a great one. And then we'll have some baseball content and maybe one more dit hole before we wrap this week up a little early due to some family matters that I have going on starting on Thursday. So let's jump right into this thing, man. I'm excited for this. I actually did a decent amount of prep yesterday while I was watching the games for this episode. So I'm very excited. We're going to add one wrinkle into this. If you want, and this was totally optional, you get one honorable mention, and it can be for the team that trucked or a team that sucked. You can add one team to either one of those lists. We had the option to do that. I just feel like sometimes 3 and 3, it's a little hard to pick and choose. And I feel like maybe you'd give it a little bit more of a well-rounded recap if we could add one more team in. So I might have an honorable mention. I'm not sure what Emmy will do, but we will see. Let's start with Prospect of the Week. I'll hand the floor over to you first.
Yeah, my Prospect of the Week was Rashawn Gary, defensive end for the Green Bay Packers. He's someone who doesn't get enough love, man. He tore his ACL last year. I think people sort of forgot how much that Packers team missed him last year. Well, outside of Packers fans, of course. But for people on the outside looking in, I think people forgot just how important he is to that defense. And it was on full display on Sunday when he just basically took over that football game. He had 2 sacks and was just all around the backfield the entire night, the entire day, really. I just wanted to show him some love just because this segment is all about players that are underrated or don't get enough respect for what they actually put out on the field, on the court, wherever the case may be. So I thought he was the perfect example for that.
That's a great one. A lot of pass rushers got off this week and had really good weeks. There was a lot to choose from. Now, and to your point, I mean, he looks like he never had a torn ACL to begin with. So good for him. Great win for the Packers, by the way. Maybe to be highlighted a little bit later. Who knows? Okay. My player isn't necessarily an underrated player, and it's not a player that doesn't get his fair share of love. Now, from a Steelers fan standpoint, we love to argue about this player when he is compared to a certain player in or on the Pittsburgh Steelers that also wrecks games defensively. And this player would be in the same division as that said player, and that would be Myles Garrett. I don't know if you watched the Browns game yesterday, but he was absolutely having a field day with the Titans left tackle Andre Dillard. It was like I thought Dan Moore was bad last week on Monday Night Football trying to block Myles Garrett, but man, Andre Dillard actually topped that performance. If you look at what Myles Garrett did, he had the number one. And, grades are grades from Pro Football Focus. Some people like him, some people don't. I get it. But he had the number one pass rushing grade in all of football for this week, a 93.2 pass rushing grade. He had 3.5 sacks yesterday of the 5 sacks that disgustingly great Browns defense had. He had 3.5 of those. He pressured Ryan Tannehill a total of 9 times and had a 34.6 pass rush win rate. So he was absolutely dominant, one of the more dominant players and game wreckers in the game today. Us Steelers fans I don't necessarily, I could if I wanted to. I don't get into that argument because, two things can be true. There are tons of great pass rushers in this league, and both TJ Watt and Myles Garrett are great in their own rights. I don't know why we have to argue and compare all the time. Like, I get it, but why can't we just acknowledge that both are great and both do different things well? But Steelers fans get riled up when he's mentioned in the same sentence as Myles Garrett. So I just thought I'd pay my respects to a player that I respect in Myles Garrett and the game wrecker that he is as a top 5 defensive player in football.
Yeah, he's just ridiculous. The last few years, the Browns team hasn't been like in primetime games a lot, so I think he kind of flew under the radar a little bit, especially with the counterparts that he had on his defensive line at that time. But now that he's got talent all across the board on that defensive line, you can't double team him. You have to just hope to slow him down or get the ball out. I mean, it kind of just feels like this year defense is up a little bit. I don't know if I don't have any stats to back this up, but the overall feel to me is just overall defense has been amazing so far this season.
Yeah, there are a lot of good defenses right now. And I don't know. You're right. We don't know if that's just a product of it being September, the first month of the season. Offense is still trying to knock off some rust. There are a lot of offenses around the league right now that are struggling to just move the football and matriculate it down the field. But I think a lot of that is due to the level that the defenses are playing at right now. As we have the Buccaneers, I believe, go 3-0 on their first drive. Darius Slay with the pass breakup. I actually have a Prize Picks bet. Didn't have a great weekend in Prize Picks, but it's okay because I'm using my promo money right now. I just joined last week, so I had over $120 in promo money. Some of that thanks to Emmy. I still have $70 left, but I have $5 down on DeAndre Swift over 36.5 rushing yards and Chris Godwin more than 53.5 receiving yards. That bet hits, I'll get $15 back. So we'll see what happens with that, but I'm going to continue to chip away at the Prize Picks, both NFL and college, until we start a little run here, and I'm sure Emmy will as well. So just wanted to mention that, put that out there for you guys. Wanted to do a little something for Monday Night Football as we have a doubleheader. Let's jump right into our Raw rundown. We're on a good pace once again at the 10-minute mark. Do you want to start with teams that sucked or teams that trucked today?
Let's start with the teams that sucked because this seemed to be a lot of there was a theme this week. And if you're a NFL nerd like me, you'll appreciate weeks like this because it really just exemplifies the any given Sunday phrase. There was a lot of upsets, and there was also a few teams that took care of business against lesser teams and blew those teams out. So there's a lot to cover when it comes to teams that quote unquote sucked this week.
Right.
And I think that conversation has to start with the Denver Broncos. I'm assuming you have them on your list as well, so maybe we just go back and forth with this Broncos conversation.
Yep.
But I mean, I figured this defense would take a step back, just because of subsequently losing Von Miller and Bradley Chubb in back-to-back seasons. It is never an easy thing to replace, but I never thought it would ever get to that point. I mean, that was unbelievable, and credit to the Dolphins as well. They're obviously the best offense in football right now, but at the same time, they're putting backups in the game, and you're still seeing holes that guys can run through that a truck could drive through. So it's just it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, for the Broncos, look, anytime you lose by 50 in the National Football League, you're going to find yourself on this list. And I don't care how many good things that you're able to find out of that film. Anytime you lose by 50 in the NFL and get embarrassed like that, especially on defense, you're going to be on this list of teams that sucked. And look, I'll even say this for the Broncos, right? I don't think it's necessarily all terrible. I actually think Russell Wilson, while he's not playing elite football, I wouldn't say that. He's playing, I think, good enough football for the Broncos to at least have a win through the first 3 weeks. I mean, you look at what his numbers are so far. He's got a 65.4% completion percentage through the first 3 weeks. He's thrown for about 800 yards. That's about, I don't know, what does that math work out to? 250-ish yards per game, 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and a 99.5 quarterback rating. That's a pretty damn good quarterback rating in the National Football League. I think Russell Wilson, while there's a lot of noise going on about his contract and, he's not living up to it and all that stuff, I think at the very least you're getting solid, good enough quarterback play to win football games if your defense can be better than what it has been. Because so far, and especially yesterday, how do you give up 726 yards and 70 points, the third most points ever in an NFL game in a game today? I mean, I know the rules have shifted more towards the offense, but I mean, that was embarrassing. The Dolphins had 350 rushing yards between Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, et cetera, et cetera. Their discipline was awful. They commit bad penalties. They make mistake after mistake. They had blown coverages all over the place. And I know, I mean, it's hard to cover the Dolphins. I get it. Horrible tackling. I didn't think they showed a whole lot of fight later on in that game. And look, that offensive line, I don't know what to say, but the right tackle spot is a problem with Mike McGlinchey. He has not played well so far this year. That continues to ail them a little bit offensively. And so, look, Sean Payton's got some problems to figure out. The good thing for Denver is they get Chicago this week. I mean, good Lord. Someone's got to win that game. I mean,
Tank Bowl.
Good God. If the Broncos lose to the Bears, we're going to have some problems next week on this show. And then you get the Jets the following week. So it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, your schedule lightens up for a couple weeks before it toughens up again. You get the Chiefs twice in 3 weeks after this next 2-game span. So you better figure some things out, especially on the defensive side of the football, and go beat Zach Wilson and go beat Justin Fields in this bad Bears team, which I don't think I'm going to talk about this episode. We'll just leave that alone for right now.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, the Broncos. The thing is, Russell Wilson went to this team with the idea that okay, I'm just gonna have to be the guy I was in say 2013 and be paired with a great defense. That was the idea behind this whole thing. Was for him to go to a roster that was quote unquote better suited to win Super Bowl right now, and that's just. I think last year was probably the window for that. That they were a top 10 defense last year, but even then they weren't like a dominant group, like a Legion of Boom or say the 2015 Broncos even. Um, it's awful right now, man. They look like a team that just broke down mentally once they got hit in the mouth a little bit. They just uh, couldn't respond to anything that was getting thrown at them.
Yeah, and look, that's the most rushing yards Denver Broncos have allowed since the beginning of the new, what is it, the millennium, the new decade, I don't know, the new century,
Yeah,
begins with 2000. And the third most rushing yards they've allowed in franchise history. Miami came into this game as a solid rushing team, uh, but they were pretty pedestrian, 15th in rushing yards per game at 107 yards per game through the first 2 weeks. Some of that could be volume, some of that could be play design, some of that could be the defenses that they played, given that they just played the Patriots. Forget who they played week one, but I mean, that can be attributed to a lot of different things, but to give up 350 yards on the ground, I mean, that's embarrassing. And then there were people running wide open all over the place all game long. Tua looked like he was basically throwing routes at practice against air for most of that game. Did he throw an incompletion? I don't remember. I mean, if he did, I don't remember.
not until the second half, probably.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it. I don't remember seeing the ball hit the ground. I mean, I was flipping between different games. Every time I flipped to that game, it was like 20-yard completion or Devon Achane breaking off a 50 or 60-yard run or Tyreek Hill getting open in the middle of the field and running for 20 yards after a catch. I mean, it was just bad. So, as I mentioned, I mean, go win these next couple games and maybe things will right. You can right the ship a little bit. I don't think it's all hope lost, but then again, 0-3 teams have themselves a tough time making the playoffs historically. Only 6 of the 251 teams in NFL history that have started 0-3 have gone on to make the playoffs. So that speaks for itself. Okay. I will go ahead and run through my second team. We both agree that the Broncos sucked, and I think everyone would agree with us there.
I think they would agree with us.
Yeah, I think they would too. And if they don't, they got some serious issues. This team, I praised this team last week, I believe. Not exactly sure. I think I had them on my teams that were good. And listen, when I say this team was bad, some of it was actually attributed to what the other team across from them was doing. A superior football team, a likely Super Bowl contender. So again, for this particular team's fans, if we have any of this team's fans watching or that subscribe to this podcast, no panic. It's not doomsday. No, the sky's not falling. It was just one not so great performance. That's the Washington Commanders. Look, Sam Howell had what I would call his welcome to the NFL game. Just bad decisions. I felt like, I mean, I said last week, I think he's pretty talented. I think he's got some moxie about him. I even said I don't think he gets all that much affected by bad plays. Just continues to play. I like a lot of the things that he does as a quarterback. I think he's capable of being a franchise guy from what I've seen so far in the short sample size. But 4 picks, again, against the defense that was playing with its hair on fire and has been playing with its hair on fire the past 2 weeks in the Buffalo Bills. 4 picks, just some bad decisions. It's okay. It happens. He's basically a rookie, only making his 5th or 6th start. it happens. I mean, the best of the best have those sort of games. Um, but the bigger issue for Washington that I wanted to highlight is the offensive line. It's not good. It actually probably attributes to the problems that Sam Howell has. They've allowed yesterday they gave up 9 sacks to the Bills, and they've allowed 19 sacks through the first 3 weeks of the season. That's the most in the NFL, and it's not close. The second most sacks allowed in the league right now is the Bears, but they only have allowed 13. The Commanders have allowed 6 more sacks than the Bears have, and it's not good for Washington, particularly because next week or this coming week, they got to go to Philadelphia. And have you seen that pass rush? So there are a lot of good pass rushes on their schedule. I'm not sure what they do about that offensive line. It's not great. But the good news is Sam Howell will learn from this. I think the Commanders are actually a team that will compete. They'll win games this year. I do believe in Sam Howell from what I've seen, with the exception of yesterday. And their running game has actually been pretty good against some pretty good defenses. I love what Brian Robinson is doing. He's rushed for 156 yards the past 2 games, 10 carries for 70 yards yesterday. Their run game seems to have some traction to it. It's just that offensive line and pass protection has just been terrible. I like their defense. I think that defense can keep them in a lot of games. But it just looks like they're probably not going to be able to compete with a lot of the top rosters in the league yet, just because that offensive line is going to get beat up by a lot of good pass rushes. But again, bad performance. It's okay. The Bills are going to do that to a lot of people this season, a lot of teams this year. They just did it last week to the Raiders. They're going to do it a couple more times probably this year, because they're just that good of a football team. But, I mean, getting beat by 34 at home, it isn't always, it's not good. So rip the Band-Aid off, bad performance, it's okay. Move on to next week, refocus, and play good against the division rival next week.
Right, exactly. I think Sam Howell just has a extremely confident processor. He thinks he can make every throw,
Yeah,
and I think
that's an
he's
issue.
just got to have time to learn that line. And some quarterbacks never find that line. That's how you get a Jameis Winston. Um, but I think he'll figure it out eventually.
I believe in him. I do too.
Yeah. I definitely believe in what he's shown so far. It's been a lot more good than bad for sure.
Absolutely.
My next team is one of the teams we had in our top 10 power rankings last week. And no, it's not my Cowboys. I'll get to them later. But um, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Um,
I had them too.
yeah, at home, losing 37-17 the way they did. It was just a lot of self-enforced errors. And also, um, they were playing a division team that knows how to attack them a little bit. It was very clear that D'Amico Ryans came in with a really good game plan as well. It just wasn't clicking. I mean, really, in this first 3 games, if you look at them in their entirety, the offense hasn't quite been as sharp as what we saw, late in the season last year. If you look at just Calvin Ridley's game, their number one wide receiver, 2 false starts, a few dropped a touchdown pass that was just an absolute dot from Trevor Lawrence on the first drive of the game. They don't even come up with points on that drive because they end up having a field goal blocked. It was just a lot of different miscues and field goal blocks, missed kicks. I mean, that they gave up that big kick return to the fullback Andrew Beck, who I believe is a Longhorn, by the way. Shout out to him. Um, I mean, not much you could really say other than just a really poor effort in the first half. And CJ Stroud just made them pay every time they tried to get in closer. It was 17-10 at one point, and then every single time they got close and made a push, it just CJ Stroud made another play.
Yeah, by the way, DeAndre Swift has already hit the over on the 36.5 rushing yards bet. And Chris
Nice.
Godwin's off to a good start. He had 7 yards receiving on the first Buccaneers drive. He still needs about 46 more, but I'm off to a good start in my bet. So that's a good thing. The
Nice.
Eagles are driving that offensive line, just blowing the Buccaneers off the ball like they do to a lot of teams. Um, so I'll talk about the Jaguars as well. Look, I don't think the sky's fallen yet in
Yeah.
Jacksonville, but you can't tell me things are good either. They're not. Now there are fixable issues for sure, but things aren't good right now, especially the past week and a half or so. I mean, that Chiefs performance wasn't as bad as this was. They actually hung in that game, and I thought their defense played well in that game. They just had some miscues offensively. But look, if you're going to truly contend in the AFC, like I'm talking not just make the playoffs and maybe win a game, I'm talking about get to the AFC championship game and maybe like be able to have the opportunity to play to go to a Super Bowl. You just can't lose. And this is no offense to the Houston Texans. I'm actually supporting the Texans this year because I'm in Houston, and maybe I'll talk about them later and teams that were good. Who knows? But you just can't lose to a winless division rival who was missing 8 starters. They were missing Denzel Perryman. They were missing Laramie Tunsil, including another 3 starters on the offensive line. They were missing Jalen Petrie. They were missing Derek Stingley Jr. They were missing a ton. Like the
Yeah.
Texans were not a healthy football team last week or yesterday. They had a rookie quarterback who I'll talk about later. You can't lose to them at home, especially by 20 points. I mean, that's just not good enough if you want to truly contend in the AFC. Look, Jaguars are the worst third down offense in the league right now, converting 25% of their third downs. That's last in the league. They're below average, or they're in the bottom half of the league in yards per game. It just seems like there's a lot of miscues offensively, some drop passes, some things not going right. I don't know if it's miscommunication sometimes. I don't know what it is, but it hasn't been great offensively. It's been kind of clunky. And I think the biggest thing, if you're a Jaguars fan, I don't know what Jaguars fans, how they feel right now, but from my perspective, that pass rush has to be better. Against the Texans offensive line that's already banged up and that was missing 4 starters yesterday. They didn't do anything up front on that defensive line, a defensive line that they've heavily invested in over the past 5 years in the draft. I mean, they have 4 first-round picks on that front 7, and they couldn't do anything. 0 sacks against that Texans offensive line. Not good enough, especially with your home crowd behind you. Not good enough for a defensive front with 4 first-round picks. It's just not. It has to be better. And then their special teams, for whatever reason yesterday, was bad. Brandon McManus, and this hurt my fantasy team, missed a field goal, had another one blocked, and then they, of course, somehow allowed Andrew Beck, who I love as a former Longhorn, but they somehow allowed that guy as a fullback to go 85 yards to the house on a kickoff return after I believe they had just scored. The Jaguars had just scored to make that game relatively competitive for a minute, and they allowed that to happen. So special teams wasn't good. The offense is clunky. The pass rush isn't getting it done. The sky isn't falling yet, but, I mean, they have some things to figure out.
Yeah. A lot to figure out for sure. Okay. But one thing about Andrew Beck, though, he did reach 20 miles per hour. So, I
Yeah.
mean, big boy was moving, not going to lie.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it's the year of the Longhorn. Who knows?
Fullback
Maybe.
season.
Maybe it is. Okay. I believe you had one more team on your list.
Yeah, yeah. One more team. I kind of struggled at choosing between a few teams here, but um, let's talk about the Falcons a little bit. This week, their one dimensionalness offensively was kind of exposed, or not kind of, really exposed. They tried to do a lot of play action to try to open up the defense. That didn't work. The defense just wasn't threatened by anything that the Falcons tried to do down the field in the passing game. Outside of a few screen passes here and there, it just nothing really clicked for Desmond Ritter. It felt like Bijan Robinson was fine. He was making plays out of the backfield, making catches. But this was a really tough day offensively, and it's a little bit disappointing considering this defense held their own against one of the best offenses in the league, in the Lions. Only held them to 20 points, and for most of that game, they were the only reason they were even within striking distance or any type of, uh, you know, any type of hope in winning this game. It was because of the defense.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird performance. Um, Look, Atlanta, um, they missed Drake London on a key fourth down conversion attempt. Um, Desmond Ritter didn't have his best day. Clear accuracy problems all day long. 21 of 37 for 200 yards and a sacked fumble that they lost, which resulted in a turnover. They didn't run the ball well at all. And some of that, I mean, you got to give credit to what the Lions did defensively, but 2.2 yards per carry isn't going to get it done. Um, it was on the road. Lions were coming off a tough loss. I expected them to play pretty good yesterday. They did. Um, we'll see what happens with the Falcons. Offensive line wasn't great yesterday, and they got to get a more consistent run game going. Ritter was sacked 7 times, and the run game was unable to get going because of that offensive line and some of what the Lions did defensively. So we'll see what happens with the Falcons. Next up, they have the Jaguars in London on Sunday morning. That's an early game. It's an 8:30 Central kickoff. So get up early if you want to watch. I believe there are 2 London games this week. From that,
Or don't. In
or
my
don't,
case.
or don't get up for that. But I mean, the Jaguars really need a win. You'd like to rebound if you're the Falcons, especially if the Buccaneers somehow pull this game out and go to 3-0 on the season. So we'll see what happens. But I thought that was a good team. Any honorable mentions for teams that sucked? I did not choose to have an honorable mention for this part. Did you?
My honorable mention was the Dallas Cowboys. I think it was only right to just add them in as honorable mention because I was thinking about avoiding talking about it altogether until we got to the Cardinals side of things. But man, I mean, this is what always happens. I mean, I posted a short like last week talking about how Cowboys fans need to slow down the bus a little bit, calm down a little bit, just because we know this team has had stinkers before, and especially in the playoffs. So this, with it being September and the hype train being as big as it was, it felt inevitable. You got to give credit to the Cardinals, of course, but the offense, it just didn't feel like they couldn't create anything explosive down the field, and everything was just 6 yard run, 5 yard pass, 4 yard pass. It was, the Cardinals just made them work for everything, and with the upgrades that they made to the receiving core, I expected a bit more in a game like this where the defense wasn't quite where it usually is. The offense needed to step up and pick up the slack, and they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, not much more to say. I'm not too worried about it. It's just like sometimes it just boils down to like an any given Sunday type of thing. We'll see what happens with the Cowboys now. They need to refocus quick because they got the Patriots coming to town on Sunday afternoon. Um, and that's a defense that can give offenses some trouble, as we've seen. Um, but I expect the Cowboys defense to play better. I think the Cardinals, I think Jonathan Gannon, what he's done with that team, with Josh Dobbs, and some of their weapons that I actually kind of like, to be honest. I mean, Rondell Moore, uh, their running back. I mean, I absolutely love James Conner. I have since he came out of the draft from Pittsburgh and was a Steeler for a couple years. He continues to be productive. Uh, they're a team that's playing scrappy and is playing hard. And once they get Kyler Murray back, I mean, what happens with that team will be interesting. Maybe they can win 6 or 7 games. Maybe they surprise people and win more than that. I don't see it, but I think they got some good things going for them, and Jonathan Gannon is doing some good things with that team. So,
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I like what they're doing offensively, and thinking about placing Kyler Murray into those spots just makes you think, okay, like this can really work. And I was kind of I didn't know how to feel about the Jonathan Gannon hire. It kind of just felt like, oh, it's kind of set up to fail here. But you got to give him a lot of credit. I mean, this team looks very competitive at the very least.
yeah, and it's 3 weeks. It's looked pretty good so far. They
Right,
lost a
right.
couple games. They lost a game they probably should have won. They blew a big lead. This week, they're not going to get any favors, though. They're going to San Francisco to play maybe the best roster in the league. I mean,
Yeah,
it's up there. That 49ers team, I don't have them in my teams that were good. So it just feels like that Thursday night game was, for me at least, a week ago. But
yeah.
it was against the Giants. But boy, oh boy, we'll see what happens if the Cardinals compete in that game. Maybe we can start talking about things.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
let's move on. Teams that were good now. Um, you want to start us off here?
Yeah. My first team was the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, going into Baltimore with a backup quarterback, knowing it's going to be a rainy, ugly game. I mean, they ran the crap out of the football, and I did not expect that at all. I mean, Zach Moss, you want to talk about workhorse? He had 30 attempts, and I believe even more touches. I think he caught a few passes out of the backfield as well. I mean, it was a old school style of football game for the Colts here. Gardner Minshew played a solid game, I thought, made the throws when he needed to, and then that front seven was really impressive to me. I mean, there wasn't really just a shutdown performance from that defense, but it's a little bit like how the Cardinals were this week. They were just making the Ravens work for everything. Nothing down the field. Every like all the little catches Zay Flowers gets where he's breaking tackles, they're rallying to the football. They're not letting him get the run after the catch ability that or show that run after the catch ability that he was the first 2 weeks. And then Lamar was limited for the most part. It felt like the Ravens couldn't string anything together. It was a lot of short gains and just grinded out first downs, and they couldn't find anything explosive. And some of that could have been the weather, but I just thought you got to give the Colts a lot of credit because they've been pretty consistent throughout these first 3 games. And you throw Anthony Richardson back in there, they're leading the division at the moment. A lot can happen still, but they could be in the thick of that division. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got the right head coach. Shane Steichen,
Definitely.
I think, is a stud at the head coach spot. I think we'll see what happens when Anthony Richardson comes back. But, I mean, Gardner Minshew's totally capable as a quarterback. We've seen him win games like this before. Um, he's kind of just that solid backup. That the Colts have that security blanket is nice to know. With a quarterback, especially with a starting quarterback that runs a lot, uses his athleticism, might get hit a little more than usual. Uh, Zach Moss, fantastic day. Uh, 30 carries, 122 yards. I know some fantasy owners were very happy about that. Um, and they just look like a well coached football team. And well coached football teams in the NFL can win a lot of games that way.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with that with the Colts. I want to talk about another team in the AFC South, local to where I'm living. That'd be the Houston Texans. Beat the Jacksonville Jet. Yes, they beat. Did I have this right? No, they beat the. Who did the Texans beat? I have it
The
wrong.
Jaguars. Yeah, you were right. Yeah.
Yeah, they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just had the score wrong in my notes here. I got it confused with the Colts Ravens game. I put 22-19. It was actually 37-17. Look, Texans, good performance. I mean, look, the
Yeah.
Jaguars didn't play a clean game. They were clunky offensively, as we mentioned earlier. The Texans kept Jacksonville to 5 of 13 on third down, playing good third down defense, discipline, as you might expect from a um, D'Amico Ryans coach defense. Jacksonville was 0 for 1 on fourth down. Texans made great special teams play after great special teams play, including that Andrew Beck return for a touchdown. They've got, I think, some things to be excited about offensively. Love
Yep.
Tank Dell as a piece. I mean, I think he's definitely a piece for them moving forward. The young receiver out of Houston, I believe he was a second or a third round pick. Um, had an explosive play yesterday, had a great day offensively. I think
Yeah.
140-ish receiving yards and a touchdown.
Two
Brevin,
touchdowns. Yeah.
two touchdowns. Brevin Jordan made some plays. Damian Pierce, I think, is a solid back. Um, they all made impact plays offensively, but look, CJ Stroud, man, you got to give him credit for what he's done the first 3 weeks. He's looked really good when I've watched him. He has not thrown an interception yet. He has the record for the most passes attempted in his first 3 starts without an INT. No quarterback has more in the history of the league. He's got more attempts in their first 3 starts without throwing a pick. 65-ish completion percentage, 900 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Good passer rating. It's early, but that's really exciting if you're a Texans fan. He's playing really well. I'm sure some of that is what they're doing offensively. Give credit to their coaching staff, but he looks the part.
Yeah. He looks polished, man. He's seen the field, and he was really good situationally as well. I really liked the, you know, 2 minute drill type drive where he led his team down the field, got 3 points at the end of the half. I thought that was really important for that game, being up 17-0 going into the half rather than 14. Um, man, he just looks fantastic. I think I read earlier he has the third most passing yards by a rookie in their first 3 games in NFL history. That's I mean, he looks the part to say the least. There's no question about it. He's been fantastic.
Yeah. Um, Look, the schedule won't get any easier for Houston. There's a game this week that we'll see. Um, it's the one game this year that I will not be rooting for CJ Stroud to succeed. I'll put it that way. Um, so yeah, I mean, I thought the Texans had a good performance. Hopefully, that doesn't happen this next week, but we'll see about it. Who is your team? Who's your next team?
My next team, um, I made a change here late. I wanted to, put the Browns again or switch it up, but I had to shout out the Green Bay Packers, man. And specifically Jordan Love. I mean, that comeback he had, that was like storybook. Your first start as a Green Bay Packer at Lambeau Field. You go out, you struggle in the first half, and then you just lead your team on an incredible comeback in the fourth quarter on three gotta have it drives. You go out and lead your team down the field. And some of the throws he made, I mean, you want to talk about Aaron Rodgers esque. I mean, there were some back shoulder throws to Romeo Dobbs that were just like, there's no defense for that. He missed some throws in this game, but the throws that he did hit, there was a lot of high level difficulty throws. I thought he looked calm in the pocket. I thought he was moving around well as well. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like with Jordan Love right now, man. I've bought into him being the guy. I think he's going to be their starter for a long time. Now, whether or not he lives up to their crazy standard in Green Bay they've got going is up in the air. But he's a starting NFL quarterback. I feel really confident with that.
And look, he's overcoming. Some quarterbacks just don't have the ability to overcome adversity, certain levels of adversity in today's league. And we won't mention who those quarterbacks are. We can argue all day about that. But no Aaron Jones, no Christian Watson, no David Bakhtiari, no Elgton Jenkins, no Jair Alexander. I mean, after going down 17-0 in that game, it would have been very easy for Jordan Love as a young quarterback to just sort of mail it in. It would have been easy for the Packers as a team to do that, but they didn't. They played really good defense down the stretch of that game. Didn't allow Jameis Winston to do much of anything. Once he came into the game, those drives stalled. Jordan Love did what he had to do, and give credit to him. That's what the really good quarterbacks in this league are able to do. They're able to overcome whatever circumstances their team has or is enduring at that particular moment in time. And he did that yesterday. Now we got to see it consistently, but I'm excited to see what this Packers team looks like once they get healthy. I mean, you get Jones back, you get those two offensive linemen back, you get Christian Watson back hopefully soon. I don't know the exact status of that. And then one of the best corners in the game is not played for them, I think, the past couple of weeks. So he should be out a little while longer, but Jordan Love, good performance, definitely. Now, one thing that they need to correct that I think can be corrected is their discipline on offense. They had 7 offensive penalties yesterday in the first 3 quarters, and they were of all sorts of kinds of varieties. A lot of them were very preventable. 3 false starts, 2 holds, an illegal formation, and a pass interference. Can't have that, especially at home. Just you don't want to do that. But I think that can be corrected. I think Matt LaFleur, as he's proven, is a really good head coach. And Packers are an interesting team, man. They were a team that I don't believe we had in our top 20.
Yeah, they were a team we considered, though.
They were a team we considered, but we didn't have them in there. And right now, it looks like they deserve to be there, especially when they get healthy. So
definitely, yeah. And that defense, if you really look at it closer, like they only gave up 10 points that entire game. They had the punt return touchdown. The Saints did, Rashid Shaheed. But outside of that, the Saints weren't really doing much offensively at all. It was really all, first quarter, the Saints went on that opening drive, had that touchdown. And then from there, that defense gave up 3 points for the vast majority of that football game. So really impressive stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot different being 2-1 than being 1-2. It's just a lot different of a feeling. If and who knows what happens if Derek Carr doesn't go down with an injury. But I mean, things would be a lot different today if they had ended up, say, losing that game 17-0 than they are right now. And the Buccaneers, is that who is that? That is Chris Godwin, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, I like that.
Looking good, dude.
Um, Buccaneers looking pretty good right now. They are driving on this Eagles defense. A nice little catch there by Chris Godwin down the little seam in the slot. Good throw by Baker. Just accurate with the football, getting the ball out quick. Um, Playing at home, good so far for the Buccaneers. Okay, I want to talk about a team the Packers are going to play here in a couple days, an in-division rival on Thursday Night Football. I believe this game will be, not sure if it's Detroit or Lambeau. I think it's Lambeau. Bad drop there. Got to catch that one. The Detroit Lions. And look, it wasn't a perfect performance by any means. They beat the Falcons 20-6, took care of business. But I think one of my things this year so far, as the other games I think is about to kick off between the Bengals and the Rams, one of my things and one of my observations this year so far, as I've watched these teams more closely through the first 3 weeks, I think the Detroit Lions, I think it's safe to say they at least had a pretty damn solid draft. At least through the first 3 weeks, I mean, they got all sorts of rookies making contributions for them. Sam Laporta, the first tight end ever since the merger to catch 5 or more passes in each of his first 3 games. That's saying a lot. He also had an explosive touchdown yesterday. I think he's a really solid football player and will be for them for at least the entirety of his rookie deal. Love Brian Branch. I thought he was one of the best pound-for-pound football players coming out of the draft this year, and he was absolutely all over the place yesterday.
11 tackles.
11 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, all over the place. Jack Campbell, the middle linebacker out of Iowa, made some plays in pass rush. He was all over the place making tackles. Solid football player. Jahmyr Gibbs needs to get it going a little bit, but I believe in Jahmyr Gibbs and what he's shown in some short bursts here and there. He gives them a different dynamic in that backfield. I think it might not be the greatest draft in the world. It might not be an A draft. I don't know. We can argue about that all day. It's only 3 games. I get it. But so far, it's looking pretty good. And look, they were missing David Montgomery. They still rushed for 115 yards yesterday. Still pretty effective on the ground. They had some miscues. I think Jared Goff threw another pick at one point. I mean, Jesse Bates, boy, oh boy. I mean, he's just been all over the field for Atlanta.
He's been the best safety this year so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But, I mean, the Lions probably could have scored more points. You can nitpick their performance offensively if you want to. But I thought their defense played really well after not playing so good last week in Seattle. And look, the Seahawks just put another 37 points on the Panthers, who I think have a pretty good defense. But after losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson to that torn pectoral, I thought that pass rush, man, I'm telling you, Aiden Hutchinson, by the end of this year, I think we'll be able to put him in that category of pass rushers. Maybe not with the elite of the elite, maybe not with the T.J. Watts and the Myles Garretts and the Micah Parsons, but, I mean, he looks like a really good player. I think he had 1 or 2 sacks yesterday. He's really good football player. I think he's a Pro Bowl caliber player, but they had other guys contributing and stepping up to get the job done up front as well. 7 sacks on Desmond Ridder. I mean, that's what we want. That's what we're wanting to see from this Lions defense.
Yeah.
So if they can do that consistently, Lions are going to be a tough out. The way Dan Campbell likes to play, once they get some of their guys back, watch out.
Yeah, I think I love when this Lions defense is able to play downhill. When they're playing a running football team, I think it really just suited them because their defensive backs, they all are premium tacklers at their positions. So whenever they play like a team like the Falcons or just a team that will run the football a lot, I think those are matchups that will really suit the Lions defense.
Yeah. Okay. You have one final team.
Yeah, I don't want to say the Browns again. I'm gonna say someone else. Let's see here. Shoot, let's shout out the Steelers. Why not? Um, Kenny Pickett last night, I thought looked much better. I think you would agree with that. I'll get your thoughts on it here in a bit, but um, I thought up until really the fourth quarter, they just played a complete football game. Their running game was a lot more effective, and Chris Collinsworth drove the point home a lot with getting away from that zone running game and getting a little bit into more hat on a hat power football. It just suited them better. Najee Harris, once he's able to see a hole open up, he's showing the acceleration. I think once you get him moving side to side, he's a lot easier to stop. I think he's a much more well suited runner in that style of running. So I think they found something. I think they showed a little bit more in terms of creativity offensively. I really liked that call, that clinching play on fourth down late in that game where um, Raiders call a blitz from the right side. They call a rollout left. It was the perfect call in that moment. Um, I mean, say what you want about Matt Canada, but got to give him his props for that game at least.
The Steelers were and I appreciate you bringing them up. They were actually my honorable mention. So
Okay.
I'll give you my thoughts on the Steelers after I get to my one team. And I'll make this quick. I took the cheese a little bit. I just found it hard to not mention the Browns for my third and final team. I'll run through it real quick, but the main point I really wanted to make was I thought Deshaun Watson had his best game since he returned from his suspension. I don't think it's particularly close. Now he had a head scratching play early on in that game, and took a little bit to get going. But once he did, I thought he finally kind of propelled that offense to take another step after some struggles the first couple weeks. I mean, you'll take 27 to 33 for 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 123 passer rating every single week from Deshaun Watson
Yeah.
with an 81% completion percentage. He was hitting Amari Cooper. He was hitting Donovan Peoples-Jones. He was hitting David Njoku. I thought he just played a really, for the most part, except for that one head-scratching play where he just tried to avoid the sack and throw it backwards for whatever reason. I think he was actually trying to make a lateral and it just went wrong because the guy was hanging on him. But don't do that anymore, Deshaun.
Yeah, I don't.
Just don't do that. I
Yeah.
mean, you're smarter than that. Um, I thought it was a really solid game. Now, good for Nick Chubb, man. Really, I'm so happy for Nick Chubb that it's not as serious as I thought it was going to be, and as many people thought it was going to be when they saw the injury. Now, I saw the video of his college injury as well. It was disgusting too. I'm not sure which one was worse, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The same
Um,
knee.
Yeah. So I guess he just has, I mean, the strength that he's built up in that knee through whatever strength training, rehab that he's done throughout his career, I guess maybe possibly helped him in that hit. And look, I respect the Browns, man, for what they were saying about Minka. Like, that wasn't a dirty hit. Don't give me that bullshit. Minka was just being Minka, wasn't trying to injure Nick Chubb. Myles Garrett said it. I believe Denzel Ward said it. I believe Grant Delpit said it. I believe Kevin Stefanski said it. If you think that was a dirty hit, just go away.
Stop
Um,
watching football, honestly.
yeah. And the defense, man. I mean, with this defense, the Browns are going to win a lot of football games, period.
Yeah.
Um, they stopped King Henry 20 yards on 11 carries. Tannehill was sacked 5 times. Pass rush was dominant. They were manhandling that Titans offensive line all day long. They lived in the backfield pretty much in the run game and getting to Ryan Tannehill in the passing game. 3.5 sacks by Myles Garrett, another half sack by Okoronkwo, who's a solid football player. He was disruptive all game. They pressured Tannehill on, get this, 40% of his dropbacks, and they just totally shut down anything the Titans tried to do on offense. So give credit to the Cleveland Browns. 2-1. They're now, well, they can't be first place because they lose the head-to-head tiebreaker with Pittsburgh. But good football team, really good football team. And I think maybe next week, if they win again, they'll be back in my top 10. Because if Deshaun Watson plays like that, we could talk about another level of what the Browns could possibly achieve this year. It's tough because losing Nick Chubb does degrade the
upside
of that offense. But, I mean, Kareem Hunt, Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong look plenty capable at the running back position. So my respect goes out to the Cleveland Browns, man. As a division rival, thought that was prompt to say. Now, do you have any rebuttal to that or any response, anything you want to add on, I should say, before I get to my Steelers?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Deshaun Watson is we saw his X factor 1-of-1 trait that he had with the Texans come back finally. It's that escapability in the pocket. I mean, his ability to shove off dudes in the pocket, slide left, slide right, and create plays from doing that. I mean, he was the best in the league at it. He was Houdini for so long doing that stuff. And today, like Sunday was the first game where I actually saw him do any of that. So we'll see how it is moving forward. But he showed a lot of good for sure against a solid defense too.
Absolutely. Titans are a good defense. I think that's one thing. If you're Mike Vrabel, you can hang your hat on. And every week you're not going to play a defense like the Cleveland Browns. So we'll see what happens with Tennessee. It's an interesting division right now in the AFC South.
Tennessee to me is like the NFL version of the Iowa Hawkeyes. Like, on the weeks where their defense is able to, stop the run and play great, they have a chance to win. But on the weeks where they give up more than, say, 23, 24, 25, 26 points, then you're just kind of in a bind.
It's a whiteout in Cincinnati as they're wearing their what do you call it? Bengal Tiger uniforms. They're white tiger. I don't know.
White something. I forget what they call them, but I like the uniforms for sure.
I do like their uniforms. And you had just a second ago Boomer Esiason and Chad Johnson hyping up the crowd before kickoff. It looks like Joe Burrow is going to give it a go tonight as the Bengals look to avoid an 0-3 start, which would be, I don't want to say the end of the world, but we don't want to start 0-3 in a division that already has 3 2-1 football teams. And the fact that you're already 0-2 in your own division isn't great. So we'll see what Joe Burrow looks like. Now that we have 2 football games going on at once, I'll go ahead and wrap this up, giving my takes on the Steelers, then we'll get out of here. Good football game yesterday for the most part from Pittsburgh. Again, Pickett was good. He actually had the highest passer rating of his career for a football game in his 16th start. Basically now a full season as a starter, you can say, finally. Actually, he's got one more game to go technically, but basically a full season as a starter. Bengals go deep, first play, incomplete. A 108 passer rating, highest of his career. First time he's thrown 2 touchdown passes in a game. Love the play calling on that one drive where I believe Patrick Peterson got the interception on the overthrow by Jimmy G. Steelers get the ball. They're up 16-7. They just created another turnover on defense as the Raiders was kind of moving the ball but not quite finishing drives. Steelers come out with a play action. They hit George Pickens on a crossing route for about 14 yards. They then go to shotgun, and they hit Freiermuth over the middle of the field for another first down. Then they, I believe, hit a screen pass to Jaylen Warren. That went for another good chunk. They then ran, I think, in between the tackles, and Najee made a great play. And then that rollout to the left to hit Freiermuth in the end zone. I thought that was one of the best drives the Steelers have put together, certainly all season, but that's what it needs to look like more often. I thought they did a better job running the football. It wasn't great, but it was a better job running the football, like Jaylen Warren's ability to see between the tackles, make people miss, and his ability to pick up guys in pass protection. I think his pass blocking ability as a guy who's 5'8" is really underrated. I thought Najee ran pretty well for most of the game. Pickens was good. Calvin Austin with the big play down the field. He needs to be more involved, I think. And they got to get Freiermuth more involved like they did yesterday. Like, I think he's a secret key to this offense. Use him over the middle of the field. That's what he's there for. Solid tight end. He'll catch the ball. He can make some stuff happen after the catch, although he's not the most athletic guy in the world. That offensive line still not love what I'm seeing. But, I mean, if you think about it, the Steelers, they've had to play Nick Bosa in that defensive front. They've had to play Myles Garrett in that defensive front. And they've had to play the Raiders' defensive front, which I know is not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination. But Max Crosby is. He's a really good football player. And Chuks Okorafor and Dan Moore were struggling all night to block them. But get the job done. It was kind of, in a way, like that was Steelers football. It got close again in the fourth quarter, but Steelers like to rely on their defense to win football games. And look, I've watched that defense enough. They've won a ton of close games over the past couple of years to keep their heads above water and above 500. And 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, I'm trusting that defense to go out and win a football game if they have to. So TJ Watt's a monster. I mean, what else is there to be said? Alex Highsmith, glad they paid him. I think that's really showing. And good football game. I love Cole Holcomb too. What he and Quan Alexander are doing at the linebacker position, huge upgrade over what they had last year.
Definitely. I think that Steelers defense, once you get Joey Porter in there, I think may even take a step forward from where they even are right now. So it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see where they go here, but I mean, they're right about what I thought they would be to start the year. I mean, outside of that San Francisco game, they've been a team that relies on the defense and can make enough plays offensively, unless,
and
they're playing the Browns.
A couple more things I'll point out. They're missing Deontay Johnson. And as you mentioned, I love that you brought up Joey Porter Jr. I questioned this coaching staff after that week 1 performance, sort of internally. I didn't bring this up on our podcast, I don't think. I mentioned it to you in a text conversation is what I did, actually. Joey Porter did not, for whatever reason, play a lot in that football game against the Niners. Not that it would have made much of a difference, but I would have liked him. I would have liked him to – can't even talk. I would have liked him to play more. But through 3 weeks, we can kind of now see what the Steelers are doing. If you look at his snap counts and the amount of times he's got on the field, I believe week 1 it was something like 9 times. Last week against the Browns, it was 18 times. Yesterday he played 28 snaps. So I think they're slowly ramping him up. And once we get about past the bye week, which is week 6 for Pittsburgh, I believe you could probably see some adjustments during the bye week. They'll get Joey Porter Jr. in there, and they'll move Patrick Peterson to the slot where I think he's more suited at this point in his career. So once we have a defense, you're right, with Joey Porter Jr. and Levi Wallace, with Patrick Peterson as a slot corner, that can make a big difference in that secondary. So good performance by Pittsburgh. I will be at the Texans game this weekend, so hopefully we can get a win. But I think that's it. Good episode. Any parting shots?
My parting shot is the Texas game this weekend is actually a really underrated one. I'm really excited for it. I'm excited to hear what you think about it coming on this next show here for Dithole. But yeah, that's really been on my mind since that Kansas team is also undefeated. So
yeah, I mean, Sark said it today in his press conference. Said we've been there, done that, basically.
Yep.
Can't overlook this Kansas team. Got to take them seriously. Jalen Daniels is a real quarterback. Like, you can make the argument, and I would make this argument. He's the best quarterback Texas has faced so far. The one thing you can say about Texas, and I'll talk about this on my episode tonight, is they haven't faced the greatest of quarterbacks so far. Can't take away anything from their defense. They've done what they're supposed to do. Like, the defense is playing lights out. But I mean, I think by the end of the year we'll look back and we'll say Jalen Milroe is like at least a very good college quarterback. I thought he showed some good things in that Ole Miss game, but so far, I mean, Jalen Milroe was clunky. JT Daniels for Rice, just meh. The Wyoming quarterback, although he looked pretty good for whatever reason, he's not anything special. Jalen Daniels and Dylan Gabriel will test this Texas defense a little more here in these next 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how Texas responds. But the way their defense is playing, and there's a long touchdown to who's number 13? Olamide Zaccheaus, the Virginia Cavalier, getting the action. I like it. Good for the Eagles.
Oh yeah, that was a few minutes ago. I wasn't sure what you were referring to.
They were showing the highlight in the Rams.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wrap this thing up. Make sure you tune in to Dithole. I got to eat dinner, so we'll probably go live more around 9:30. We got some good stuff, though, and then Emmy and I have to talk probably off air about our baseball episode that we'll have either tomorrow or Wednesday. And I'll have one more Dithole episode before Thursday out for you guys before we kind of take a long weekend. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you to our 2 viewers. And tune in for Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports here around 9 p.m. and enjoy Monday Night Football. So just like the chances of any defensive coordinator stopping the Miami Dolphins offense, we are going. Have a good night. Peace out.
So.